So guys, Striker easily tops the chart when it comes to raw DPS in the Division 2. This makes Striker an all too convenient option for clearing higher difficulty activities without really breaking a sweat. But some of you may be wondering, what's the best Striker build to use for solo PvE? Well, there are many options, but in this video, I'm going to break down the top 3, so I'm going to showcase 3 of the most powerful solo Striker builds to use for PvE in the Division 2 as of now. And honestly, these builds have made it so much easier for me to clear legendary missions, so they are pretty solid. Now that's not to say you have to run legendary content, you don't have to, but just know that these builds will get you through them a lot easier if you decide to run them. So these builds will work exceptionally well for clearing higher difficulty content, so legendary strongholds, the summit, and all that other jazz. Also, these builds are not complicated at all, so you shouldn't have any problems setting them up if you're a beginner or a returning player. Farming for the pieces shouldn't be much of a grind for the most part, aside from the exotic weapons of course, and one particular exotic gear piece which I'll touch on later in the video. And if you don't have any of these exotic weapons, no worries because there are excellent alternatives that I'll be sharing with you. Now another thing is, these builds are designed for my preferred playstyle. So since I prefer having more survivability, I like to run with mostly blue core armor and a Crusader ballistic shield, for example. However, I'm well aware that many of you would rather go all weapon damage or somewhere in between for a nice balance of both weapon damage and survivability. And even if you're a veteran player with a few great Striker loadouts, I still encourage you to stay with me because perhaps you might discover something new. So without further ado, let's get started. Striker's battlegear is the greatest of all times, and it wouldn't make any sense not to have at least one Striker setup in your loadout. This Striker setup uses the Striker vest, which harnesses the power of the Striker vest talent, Press the Advantage, and with the talent Press the Advantage, your Striker stacks are doubled from 100 to 200. So this basically allows you to deal out more damage. And although the downside may be having to build up that many stacks, it's relatively easy if you use the ACS 12 shotgun as your secondary. The primary weapon I'm running is the St. Elmo's engine, and this gun is simply amazing. Like, it's so accurate and stable even without the Striker weapon handling bonus. Another great thing about this weapon is that you get shock ammo every 100 shots you land. And this is all thanks to the talent Actum Est. Shooting an enemy with this weapon will give you a stack, and at 100 stacks, the next magazine will be 100% filled with shock ammo. However, in the Dark Zone and Conflict, this got reduced to half. Also, another good reason why this gun complements Striker so well is because of the crit bonuses that you get from the mods. You get 15% critical hit damage and chance, and as many of you guys already know, the Striker set doesn't provide any crit bonuses. This gun is very easy to get as it's in the general loot pool, so I recommend trying your luck with Countdown. Just make sure to have Assault Rifle set as your targeted loot and try Heroic difficulty for a higher chance. But some great alternatives to this weapon is the Strega, Eagle Bearer, Chameleon, or even the Pestilence if you have one. But if the struggle is real, like super real where you just don't have any exotic ARs, then just craft an F2000 or a Police M4. For the secondary weapon, I'm using the named ACS 12 shotgun, the Rock and Roll. This is the best weapon for building up Striker stacks, and if you're going to run the Striker vest, I highly recommend getting this. This weapon can also be attained very easily, so again, I recommend Countdown. Now for the mask, a Striker mask with crit damage as well as a 12% crit damage mod. For the Striker vest, critical hit chance with a 12% critical hit damage mod, and the talent Press the Advantage, which I mentioned earlier, that will double Striker stacks from 100 to 200. Many of you already know this, but you will build stacks for each weapon hit. At 0.65% per stack, so at full stacks, that's 65% weapon damage. And so with this talent, it doubles, right? Plus, you get that 15% weapon handling and rate of fire bonus as well. For the holster, a Fenris group for an extra 10% assault rifle damage, rolled with both crits, and Striker knee pads rolled with critical hit chance. For the gloves, the 4th Striker piece with crit damage, and for the backpack, I went with Keela Guard for the 5% total armor bonus, with armor regen and critical hit chance. And honestly, I would actually prefer to have critical hit damage instead of armor regeneration, but hey, that's RNG for you. Now, for the talent, Unstoppable Force is great because your weapon damage increases for each enemy you kill. You get 5% increased weapon damage per kill, stacking up to 5 times. So at full stacks, that's about 25% weapon damage, right? For a duration of 15 seconds, which is similar to the Vigilance talent but without the negative effect. However, some great alternatives for this backpack would be a Walker Harris or a Grupo backpack. Or even better, a Memento exotic backpack if you have one. But Walker Harris gives 5% weapon damage and Grupo will give you 13% critical hit damage. So the choice is yours. For the stats, 55% critical hit chance and 120% critical hit damage. And for the skills, the Crusader Ballistic and Reviver Hive. And just in case anyone wants to know, here are my shield mods. It's funny because someone actually left a comment on a previous video asking how my shield health regenerates so quickly. Well, having an active regeneration mod helps with that. And here are the mods for the Reviver Hive. For the weapon specialization, I went with Gunner for the 10% armor on kill bonus, and I like to use the Banshee Pulse sometimes too to stun the enemies. So it's great for crowd control. For the passive modifiers, Pressure Piston, Quicken, and Retribution will all work great, especially Retribution. Alright guys, this next variation of Striker is my absolute favorite. I made a video on this variation a couple months ago, so if anyone's interested in seeing a more in-depth breakdown of it, a link will be in the description. But this is another super powerful Striker setup using the Chameleon exotic assault rifle. I've made some small changes to it since the last video, so now I have slightly more critical hit chance, plus it's fully optimized. This setup is absolutely insane, and you can see crits as high as 900,000 with a maxed expertise weapon. And that's with all blue core armor. But even at a low expertise, this build is still amazing. So, unlike the first setup, this setup won't be using the Striker vest. Instead, we will be using a Fenris group vest for the bonus 10% assault rifle damage as well as the talent Obliterate. Obliterate works great with Striker because you will basically get a nicely added 20% bonus weapon damage. So you get 1% weapon damage per stack for landing critical hits, and at full stacks, that's an extra 20% increased weapon damage, since stacks cap at 20. Rolled with both crits, and for the primary weapon, the Chameleon works like magic with this setup. So you see, with the talent Adaptive Instincts, landing 65 body shots grants 90% weapon damage for 45 seconds. And on the other hand, landing 30 headshots grants 20% critical hit chance and 50% critical hit damage for 45 seconds. And by landing 20 leg shots, you get a 150% reload speed bonus for 45 seconds as well. So all three of these bonuses will stack, so you don't have to worry about them canceling each other out. But some great alternatives to this weapon are any of the previous weapons that I've mentioned for the first build. So again, the St. Elmo, Eagle Bearer, Strega, or F2000. Now for the secondary weapon, the rock and roll named ACS-12 shotgun for building up Striker stacks, which again, a great place to get this weapon would be Countdown. And for the gear pieces, 4-piece Striker's battle gear set with the Liquid Engineer backpack. For those who don't know, this backpack comes with the talent Perfect Bloodsucker. Perfect Bloodsucker is great because it adds a lot of survivability. You can see just how crazy your armor bar can get when you're sitting at full stacks, so this can really help keep you alive in higher difficulty runs. So basically, killing an enemy adds and refreshes a stack of 12% bonus armor for 10 seconds, maxing out at 10. So that's about 120% bonus armor at full stacks, right? A great alternative for this bag is the exotic Memento backpack. The Memento bag is great because it gives you bonus armor and increases your weapon damage. But if you'd like to farm for the Liquid Engineer bag, you can also try Countdown with backpacks selected as your targeted loot. But there is a chance it can drop from proficiency caches as well. For the attributes, armor regen and critical hit chance, and a 12% critical hit damage mod. And for the attribute on the holster, critical hit chance. So you basically want crits for all the attributes on your gear pieces, right? For the stats, 49% critical hit chance and 117% critical hit damage. And for the skills, the same as the previous setup, Ballistic Crusader Shield and Reviver Hive. But feel free to use whatever skills you prefer. I like using the Reviver Hive just in case I go down while solo. And for the weapon specialization, I went with Gunner. Okay, so this last Striker build setup is another one of my personal favorites, and for this build, I'm using the Strega Exotic Assault Rifle. This setup is very similar to the previous setup. In fact, the only difference between the two is the backpack and primary weapon. The Strega Exotic Assault Rifle is a powerhouse. This weapon can deal out a ton of damage, which is primarily due to its weapon talent. So, with the talent Unnerve, killing an enemy will apply a mark on every enemy within 20 meters, and multiple marks can be applied to the same enemy. The maximum number of marks that can be applied to an enemy is 5. Now, each mark will deal 15% amplified damage to marked enemies, so that's super cool. So for the backpack, the memento bag comes with all 3 core attributes and the talent kill confirmed. This talent is amazing. So real quick for those who don't know, enemies you kill will drop a trophy. Collecting trophies will provide both a short and long-term buff. The short-term buff will scale to the number of attributes you have equipped and lasts for a duration of 10 seconds. On the other hand, with the long-term buff, for every trophy collected, you gain 1% weapon damage and skill efficiency and 0.1% armor regen for a duration of 5 minutes. And every time you collect trophies, both timers refresh. So this is a great backpack to have and use for PVE. Some great alternatives are a Grupo or Walker Harris bag, and if you want to add more damage to it, you can roll Unstoppable Force as the talent. Or if you want more survivability, you can just use a Liquid Engineer bag if you have one. And for the vest, you can go with a Walker Harris or Grupo vest. Either of those two are good replacements because with Walker Harris, you get 5% weapon damage, and with Grupo, you get a 13% critical hit damage bonus. For the skills, the Ballistic Crusader Shield and Reviver Hive, and Gunner for the weapon specialization. So again, you want to go with crits for the gear attributes. Also, feel free to roll all red with this build or the previous 2 if you'd like. You don't have to go all blue. This is Prajna, and I hope this video brought value to you. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Good luck farming, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them for me in the comment section. Keep it cool, keep it classy, and see you in the next video. Peace out.